Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
And the aliens would mind meld and give them the technology. They're bad aliens. So are you surprised the Nazis were influenced by demons?
No, if demons are real, I would definitely think they'd be on the side of the Nazis.
Yeah.
McDonald's is connected to the Clintons. They chop up the bodies and put them into the sausage and hamburgers. People are being cannibalized. Look it up.
And I'm watching CNN talk about this as violent white nationalist protests. We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful, you know?
It's Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
Welcome to Yeah Nah Passaran, a show about fascism and its gravediggers. I'm Cam Smith.
I'm Andy Fleming.
And this week we are joined by journalist Amanda Moore, who's reporting to us from America's capital, where she has been enjoying some 250th birthday celebrations. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for tearing yourself away from all that birthday cake to come and tell us all about it.
The fair doesn't open for another hour, so that's the only reason I have time for you right now.
Oh, thank you. How are things in DC at the moment? It seems a little esoteric, maybe.
Oh, it's crazy. I don't think people here outside of really this area understand how much the administration has impacted daily life for people in the city. It's wild.
How's the algae?
It's really, I was at the reflecting pool yesterday and the water looks the worst I've ever seen it under the Trump administration. It looks like if you touched it, you would die. So it's pretty bad.
Apparently you might get arrested, Amanda.
There's a fence. So they've kept temptation away.
Too alluring otherwise. Yeah, maybe could you tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing around town? It seems like this is maybe not your typical birthday celebration.
We have the National Guard is everywhere, all over the place. And we have out-of-state cops that have been deputized by the marshals, and they're everywhere too. But I guess unfortunately for them, they were sent here at the height of the pool frenzy. So we just had all these cops and troops patrolling the pool and making sure that no one put their hands in it. We've had this great American State Fair that's been going on, I feel like, since my entire life, but I guess not really that long. That is basically a big Ferris wheel. And then tiny little closets for every state to set up a display, and then absolutely no shade. And it's been 111 degrees for the past several days in a row. So it's not a really fun birthday party for us, I think.
What's been your favorite state booth, Amanda?
I like Michigan because you can milk a fake cow and they give you cereal and chips.
So it is somewhat entertaining. What's the vibe like? Are there many people there?
No, there's not. So the thing is that some of the states are there and they're trying their best and it's not their fault, right? This was all planned so last minute. It was put together in February. An event like this takes 1 to 2 years at minimum to plan. So the states are doing what they can do. But the actual infrastructure of the fair is so bad that even with that, it's terrible because every time you go into a state booth, you have to open the door and let all the air conditioning out and all the heat in. And that's every time someone goes in and out, the door is open. And so it's just sweltering hot and everyone's miserable. And it is pretty barren. The 4th of July was busy, and the 4th of July is always busy. But there were 4 entrances, and I went to one entrance and it was like a 3-hour wait. So I walked to another entrance and it was a 15-minute wait to get in. So it's also not even like well organized. There's nobody with walkie-talkies being like, send people down 2 blocks. But they did evacuate us on the 4th of July. So even though it was busy, we all got kicked out.
I do sympathise. It's like a centennial you see coming. The mid-centennials are the ones that sneak up on you.
Yeah, no one had any idea this was going to happen. It's a big surprise to all of us. So that's why there was no planning involved.
And Amanda, who's responsible for running the show and what's their relationship to Mr. Trump?
So the people who were planning the celebration, it was originally a group called America 250, which was supposed to be a nonpartisan organization created by Congress, but its own nonprofit separate from Congress. And a lot of the leadership positions were given to people who were in charge of various departments, Department of Labor or whatever. They would have a role. And so when Trump came in, he removed a bunch of career people and installed his own people in those positions. And those positions were all America 250 leadership positions. And I actually wrote about that, and I broke some of the news about it last year. There was a military parade for Trump's birthday, and I wrote a story. I went to the Bitcoin conference to chase down this America 250 group because they were a sponsor of the Bitcoin conference for some reason. And after there was a lot of pushback on that, the people who organized the military parade was Event Strategies, and they're who organized January 6th. Trump said, okay, well, you know what, never mind, and just made Freedom 250, which is his own group with his own people. So Freedom 250 organized the fair, and the organization they paid to do it is, again, Event Strategies, who, again, organized January 6th.
Amanda, we're about to have our cake and eat it too. I see some commentary online that seems to revel in little things like these events being flops, things like the algae, things like let's watch them take his name off the wall. The commentary seems to be a substitute for doing anything. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that general phenomena.
I think in terms of the pool, I think that I actually really support the commentary on that, because there's a lot of times in this country where we will have a program of any kind that provides a social service or net good for humanity. You can look at Doge and what they have done as an example of this, where Republicans in general, not Trump, just Republicans come in and say, we don't need to do this. I can do it better by saving a bunch of money, and we're going to do it my way. And then 2 to 4 years later, it blows up, but the news has passed. So I actually really like the pool because it's this perfect encapsulation of what Republicans have done for my entire life in America, where you actually can do it better. You save money by cutting corners. You didn't address the core issue, and now the problem is worse than ever. Thanks. So I very much support the focus on that, and I hope it stays. I also know that it's making Trump absolutely bonkers. He can't stand it. But yeah, everything else. And I also, having actually been at the fair, I have a great deal of empathy for these artists, in particular, people who are with the National Endowment of the Arts, who are doing these actual cultural performances to a crowd of 3 people. And my preference would actually be that the fair was successful. But the pool, whatever. It's like a low stakes way to get that message across. Now, that being said, if that doesn't translate, then that's a problem. But yeah, for whatever reason, these visuals have really captured the American public. And I have seen people say, how come no one's talking about Freedom 250 taking over America 250? And it's like, well, people have been writing about it for over a year. You just haven't been reading it. But so maybe it'll be like a good jumping off point for people to read the paper for a change or something.
Amanda, I understand that there were going to be a whole series of very talented musicians perform for the birthday celebrations, but for whatever reason they didn't, and instead we were treated to another address by President Trump. Did you manage to catch him, or do you have any ideas about what it was that he wanted to convey on the 250th?
So I have like a strong policy that I don't go to Trump rallies because I don't want to deal with the security. So the night before the fair, Trump gave a speech, and I did not go, but it was like on the fairground. So the fair was like, I guess, technically open, but I don't think the booths were staffed. I was at the reflecting pool the entire time. And then, of course, on July 4th, Trump gave another speech. And I think the idea with that is there were 2 secure zones. This is very confusing, so bear with me here. Basically, on the National Mall, about half of it is the fair. So that's a security. You have to go through security to get into the fair. I don't really, because I'm press, but the general public has to stand in line. They can't bring in normal bags. They can't bring in drinks. They can't even bring in a refillable water bottle. Hand sanitizer, sunblock, all of that gets taken from you. So you go through security and then you're in. And then there was at the other, further towards the reflecting pool, there was a more secure zone because Trump was speaking. And that was Secret Service that was actually doing the searching there. And so the rules were even stricter. And you had to show an actual ID to get in. And what's unfortunate is that really nobody that was on the ground heard Trump's speech on July 4th because there was the threat of a storm. So they evacuated us, and it took over an hour to get us out because people just refused to leave. It took about an hour and a half. And then they didn't let people back in time. So Secret Service just closed one of the entrances to the super secure zone, and people were just standing in the street. And they could just hear the Charlie Brown, like the muffle womp, womp, womp of Trump's voice. And he really just gave the speech to the television. He didn't really give it to anybody who had stood in line and camped out for 5 or 6 hours to see him.
And Amanda, how is the Taste of Form, the official energy drink of Freedom 250?
Okay, I went yesterday and they were all out of energy drinks. I went to all of the booths, which means I had to walk like a mile. Okay. And the very last one, they had a display bottle out of grape form, warm in the sun. And they gave it to me for free because they felt bad for me.
Score. And how was it?
Disgusting. It was awful. And then I was about halfway through with it and a bird pooped on me. So then I had to go into a neighboring museum to buy a t-shirt. And I had to throw my half-consumed form out. I wasn't even able to finish it, which was very sad because the museum wouldn't let me bring it in because you could spill it all over the dinosaur bones or whatever.
Yeah, God knows what would happen if you did that.
I don't know. It would definitely come back alive. Some kind of demon. So I would say maybe it's better if it's cold, but warm, it's not so good.
Feels like a very complex metaphor, the whole affair.
Amanda, you've also been recently trailing after ICE and after Gregory Bovino. What have you discovered in your travels?
Yeah, so last August, I had started following ICE around DC and filming them, which kind of turned into flying out to Chicago and going to Broadview, which is the ICE facility that was the headquarters for Border Patrol and ICE while there was a surge there. And that was led by Gregory Bovino. And after we were at the facility, it was extremely brutal, a lot of violence at the facility. And then we started following them around as they did raids and arrests throughout Chicago, then Charlotte, and then New Orleans, and then Minnesota. And it was just a lot of violence. I had a friend come to Minnesota that had not been to the other cities, and there was a gas station where Bovino, his guys busted out the window of a car in the gas station and dragged the guy out and beat him until he passed out and then arrested him. And they also tackled a protester who literally had done nothing and carted him off too. And there's busted gas and pepper spray and pepper balls everywhere. And my friend was just like, was this a remarkable day? And I was like, not really. Just following these people doing this incredible amount of violence and random neighborhoods throughout all of these cities and states that they had been to, and just dragging people out of their cars, dragging them away from bus stops and hauling them off just because they look like they might not be American visually. And so that was a very intense experience. Though, of course, Bovino has now been relieved of his position, but ICE is still at work. They're still brutalizing people, including protesters outside of the facilities, like in Delaney Hall in New Jersey, which I was at a few weeks ago and was more violent against press in particular than I had seen elsewhere. They were beating journalists with their batons, smashing their cameras on purpose, breaking their fingers, that kind of stuff.
Alongside some of the worst of humanity, you've also been witnessing some cheerier scenes in that there's a mass community response to ICE's provocations. Could you tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing communities do to fight back against ICE?
Yeah, so this is something I saw in DC and then everywhere else that I went. And so it's not even, I think a lot of people in America, at least, really only saw footage out of Minnesota. But this happened everywhere. ICE comes to an apartment complex, they knock on someone's door, and the entire neighborhood comes out. ICE is parked somewhere waiting for somebody, and people come out of their homes and they make signs that say ICE is ahead, and they stand on the road and tell people to make U-turns and go away. And it's protesting, but it's not like your typical protest. There's not like a planned date or time. It's literally, I would be filming ICE banging on doors, and I would watch as people come out of their homes. And it's not like cars are pulling up. Sometimes, yes, but other times it's literally just 5 or 6 neighbors that come outside and are screaming at ICE and are screaming, "Stay inside." And I think that is very powerful. I know the big protests get a lot more attention, but those, I think, were always the most meaningful to me and the most interesting to me. The person that they're coming after. This is like where you live.
Given the extraordinary violence that the deportation program has enacted, and despite community resistance, would you say that the program has been successful in its own terms, and I guess also in presumably generating a great deal of fear and anxiety on the part of migrant communities in the United States?
Yeah, when you look at the numbers, they are not extraordinarily high. But what the administration would say, and what I think is correct, is that they're making this show, and then the focus is really self-deportations and just making quality of life so low and so miserable that people don't want to come here. And that is the case. In Chicago, in the Signal chats, I would see people scared, and they would say things that weren't true. They would say, "Oh, ICE is at the school," and they would describe the car, and I'd be like, "That's my rental car. I'm not ICE." And I saw a lot of false alarms with that. And so when I was in Minnesota and I saw the same stuff, I was like, "Oh, it's more false alarms." But then we realized it was not false alarms. It was like actually ICE. I don't know if they were in the chats getting ideas from the paranoia, because that's what I would do, right? If I was trying to terrorize the community. And then people don't want to send their kids to school, and people can't go to work. And so the idea is just that they'll self-deport. And I don't know how many self-deportations there were, but I know that it made it so that people wanted to leave, if not America, at least where ICE was having such a strong presence.
There's a big operation that goes into the community response, 3D printing whistles and distributing literature and things like that. At the same time, we've recently seen incredible sentences handed down for things like moving zines around, connected to that case we spoke about a few weeks ago. Are actions like that having a chilling effect on these sort of community responses?
I think that sentence was so recent that I think it's going to be like some time to see the full effects. But it happened, that was in Texas. And so I don't know that situation got as much attention as it would have if it happened somewhere else, right? So when you look at the Broadview 6, so there were 6 people who were given federal charges for standing in front of an ICE vehicle as it was trying to enter the Broadview facility. And they were all but one picked because they were notable people running for office, that kind of stuff. And that they worked really hard to get charges, and they lied, and they really just tried to handpick the grand jury, which you cannot do. And it ended up being dismissed with prejudice. And now the Broadview 6 have filed to have their attorney's fees paid for by the government, and the government has just agreed to just do it because they don't want discovery. And I think had a Broadview case or a Minneapolis case gotten that kind of sentence, it would be more impactful because it would just be in the news more. Whereas Texas is not, there's not a previous hook. People were not super focused. Even when we were in Chicago, I felt like I was on Mars because I would fly home to go to a wedding or have a couple days off and come home. And it was like nobody had any idea what I was witnessing in Chicago, this mass scale of violence that I was just seeing every day, seeing people snatched away from bus stops. And so certainly like in Texas, people are not super eyes on. So I think, yes, it will have a chilling effect, but I think it would be in our news more if it had happened in Minnesota or if it had happened in Chicago, if that makes sense.
Amanda, it seems that Trump's personal popularity has been falling for a while, perhaps if not for this program that he's implemented, perhaps because he declared war on Iran. I'm wondering if, I know you've done reporting on the Groypers in the past, I'm wondering if you can say anything about the kind of political composition of Trump's support base at the moment and how that's reacted to both things like the deportation program and also the war in Iran.
So I think a lot of those kinds of people really liked Greg Bovino. And I think people were upset when he was removed. But on the other hand, from a practical standpoint, Bov was doing this stuff where he was tear gassing protesters and whatever. And at the end of the day, the way, if you really want to clamp down on this, on the protests outside of a facility, you don't tear gas them, you arrest them. And you hold them for as long as you can legally hold them. And then you let them go. And you do that every single time. And people are going to stop protesting because who can keep going to jail, right? And he never did that. And so I know I would hear criticism of that. But I think they really liked the violence. Certainly the visuals, the videos that I filmed, that other people filmed, the photos people took, the professional photos and videos, like DHS used that. They stole our stuff and would use it in marketing. And I think the Groypers in particular really liked that stuff. The war in Iran, really anybody like young men, who the Groypers are, it's not really in their best interest for us to go to war. And I think there's a lot of complicated feelings. And I also think that a lot of people on the right kind of work out some of those complicated feelings with me by telling me what they're thinking. And so I think it also maybe skews my perception of how the masses feel. But it seems like there's been a lot of complicated feelings and the war has been really bad. It's maybe not as bad as like the Epstein files. I think the Epstein files would actually be where I saw and heard and was talked at the most about anger with Trump, even more than the war. But certainly the war looks really bad. And it gets to a point where these influencers and the media have to just be delusional or pretend to be delusional to still be cheery and like gung-ho about this stuff. And I don't know. This is another reason, I'm sorry to bring it back to the pool, but I really have been there every single day for like 3 weeks straight now. But I really think that the pool was the best thing the president's ever done. It's like right up there with letting us leave our shoes on at the airport now, because people came from all over the world. People are here because of FIFA. And so they're like touring DC, even though we don't have games, come to the Capitol, see it, like whatever. Right wingers are in town because of July 4th. And everybody would just stand around the pool and look at it and be like, wow, that's really green. And like you would see people in MAGA hats and people who like obviously live here and hate Trump have actual conversations about the pool being green and like what they would do. This is how I would fix it. Nobody knows what they would actually do. Like discussing the animal, which like actually brought people together in a way. And it made people look at, like, I know Jesse Waters from Fox News went to the pool with it green, pointed at it and said, that's blue. And it's one thing to see that on TV, but to see it in person is different. And so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know this popularity is ever going to like really matter because it doesn't, at the end of the day, his core is so vocal and strong, but it does seem the war is bad for him.
Firstly, just put chlorine in it. Secondly, what do you make of that?
No, because then that goes into my water. It goes straight into the river.
What do you make of Tucker Carlson's ideas of launching a third party?
They should do it. They should do it. The Republicans should launch as many parties as they want. We can have 30 parties in this country. I think that's great. The more Republican spinoff groups we have, the better. Honestly, I encourage them.
Amanda, you've noted that the reaction to the green pool hasn't been great for Trump. We have midterms coming up in November. How are they shaping up for the Republicans?
It's complicated. The DOJ has requested the names of everybody who was working in 2020, and they've been told no by a federal judge. And they've put all the states on notice. We're watching you guys for this upcoming election. And I think in terms of popularity, I think the Republicans are not particularly popular right now. And a good example of this would be, and I've written about this, And maybe I think one of the most important things I've ever written, following Border Patrol around, they liked us. They liked that we were there. After the first couple of weeks of them pointing guns at us, intentionally us and as press, and gassing us and everything, once we started following them around the city, they were cool with it. And as long as we were quiet, and there were like a dozen of us that were in every city or almost every city. And they loved the footage. And I would take a video. I took a video of a woman. Her name was Aaliyah Rahman. She was on her way to a doctor's appointment and she drove up on a raid. And it like the entire block was covered in tear gas and there's protesters everywhere. And there's a bunch of armed masked men surrounding her car, telling her to go down the street. I don't even know. I think it was like a one way. You couldn't even go down it. And she freaked out. She didn't know what to do. And of course. And so they busted out her window, dragged her out of the car, cut off her seatbelt, carried her away. I think she passed out at some point. And that video, people all over the world contacted me about it and to let me know, I saw this. It's the first thing that my parents voted for Trump, but this is the first thing that's actually upset them. People, other journalists reached out and let me know, I wrote this story. I was inspired. Thank you for this video. I contacted this woman, whatever. And ICE and Border Patrol were like, oh, that's your video? That's so cool. Yeah, what car are you in? You can follow us. And it's just like this disconnect between these very insulated groups that kind of make up the main Trump orbit and the rest of the country, the world. And so I think that they're operating this way where they're immune to criticism and they don't really understand that some of the stuff they do, the visuals of it are so horrific. And even maybe someone who voted for Trump is like, oh my God, what is this? Even Alex Jones, when Renee Good was killed, was like, oh, and when then Alex Preddy was killed and he had his gun on him. And of course, that's Alex Jones's big thing is guns. You could see there was like a moment when he was live where he was like, uh-oh, but then he powered through. And so I don't know. I think that if everything was normal, they would be in for a big surprise. That being said, I don't know. ICE is ramping up again. And you don't have to have ICE at the voting stations, the polling stations, right? I can tell you when ICE went to Chicago, the first week I had a gas mask on my hip at my hotel checking in. And they were like, is everything okay? What's going on? What's that for? And within 6 weeks, I was like checking into a Hilton in downtown Chicago. And the guy checking me in was like, oh, journalist, are you here for Border Patrol? Because it was so all over the city. It impacted the entire Chicagoland area. And so if you have blue cities or you have swing areas, you really could just have ICE doing their thing. And it causes such disruption in the community and it makes life so hard for everybody and it impacts everyone. It's impossible to avoid. And if you just do that in November, I don't know. And I don't want to say, oh, I know this is their plans that they're going to do, but there's been a lot of speculation that could be an option. And outside of the cities that were impacted, it's really hard to convey how disruptive it is to the life of every single person. And I don't know, I think that's a possibility on the table for the midterms, I would guess.
Amanda, we'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time, unfortunately. But if people want to read more of your work, they can find you on Bluesky at noturtlesoup17.bsky.social. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Andy, that is our program. We will be back next week.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Join Uncle James Williams at 7 p.m, Saturday, July the 25th at Moonee Valley Bowls Club at Ormond Park for the official launch of his campaign for Essendon with the Greens for the state election in November. Hear Uncle James speak about taxing the rich, housing, climate action and a stronger future for everyone. Meet local supporters, enjoy music and conversation, and be part of a positive movement for change. All are welcome. Come along, bring your family, and help launch a campaign built on respect, community, and hope. The Australian Greens Victoria are a 3CR supporter.
The new International Bookshop's Big Red Book Fair is back for 2026. We'll have thousands of second-hand books for super low prices and 20% off new books, plus many other cool things. This is a great moment to support Melbourne's longest-running left bookshop. I'll see you on Saturday, the 18th of July from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Trades Hall. 54 Victoria Street, Carlton. Can't wait to see you there. The New International Bookshop is a 3CR supporter.